And welcome to Good and Wise Camp's Web Development. Today's lesson 5, calling Web API via AngularJS. So as the title says, today we'll be looking at, calling a Web API using AngularJS. Anyway, so Web APIs, how do we call them using AngularJS? Good question. Let's see if we can answer that. Alright, so if you want to create today's application, the initial components are, so I'm using 2013, Visual Studio 2013, I think I just said that. So go to File, New, here as shown in A. And then in the B, you want to select these options. In C, you want a completely empty project. We don't want any MVC, nothing in there. So C, we just want it completely empty. Okay, so let's get into Visual Studio. We will be adding in a number of components. Yeah, let's go this way. Right, so here we have our completely empty app. So let's make that not so empty. First, we're going to add Angular, which we do through the Manage NuGet packages. So we click on that guy to help this so that we can find him easier. Let's type in there Angular. And we want this one specifically, this AngularJS library. So click on Install. And this will create a scripts folder over here where all our Angular magic is added. You can see the scripts folder being created there. By the magic of NuGet package manager. If you're interested in learning more about Angular, I do some tutorials on that as well. Feel free to have a look at my website, because we're not going to go deeply into Angular today. So some of the components that you'll see, I do cover in my other website tutorials specifically on Angular. So let's just close that for now. Now we need to add a JavaScript file in here, which will have our own personal Angular code. So I always like to call this, for demonstration, my app JavaScript file. So he's down there. Okay, so we can see the My App in there now. A little trick I like to do is also, you can reference, we don't want to have a look at all that code. You can put this little reference here in your code, and then by the power, you get Angular come up. Oops, come on. Yeah, you get Angular IntelliSense. Anyway, that's a different side subject. So this will be our Angular file. Next, we're going to add a HTML file. So add HTML page, get password. The logic of our app is going to mimic other tutorials that I have done on Web API. So we're going to call this HTML page get password. While that's doing all that magic, I'm going to grab already the Angular code. This is all the Angular code. I will obviously talk a little bit about the Angular code and what it does. So let's put him in there. So that's our Angular code. Now let's grab, whoops, what's it doing? Nothing good. Okay, let's grab our HTML code, make everything a little bit quicker. Okay, so we've got all those components in there. Let's save everything. Okay, so that should be our client application here, I believe, all set to go. Now let's add a new project, and this is going to be our web API area. So add new project. Let's, where do we want to put it? Packages. We will call it, we'll put it in here, and he's going to be just our web, we'll call it web API. So this is going to be our physical web API, just to be clear. So click OK. So now we want empty, but we want a web API app. So click OK. Now, we're going to have to do a number of things also to our web API to allow this project to reference this external web API. And without getting too technical at this stage, you don't really have to do this process with MVC, but you have to do this process at times, well, and this definitely from what I've seen with JavaScript applications and another particular applications. But I won't get too techy in that. We have to put some magic in here, which I'll describe and we'll go through, so that an Angular HTML application can call into this web API. Okay, so let's have a look. So we will have to add some code in here. Whenever a web API is created, it's created with its own web API folder here. So what we normally traditionally do, or I do, is I add this API folder here. So we go add folder and we call it API. And then, as obviously, we've got to add a web API controller, not an MVC controller, a web API controller. So do that. And I do just want to, sorry, I'm just going to, I want to keep the syntax the same here. So username controller, so we're going to call this user, oh, I'm terrible, or the, yeah, I just want to keep all the syntax the same. So we're back in our web API, adding a controller, and we're going to call it username. Might as well, yeah, let's grab the code while it's doing all that stuff. Okay, so can I just paste it in there? Should be right. Right, so here's our web API code. We have to create a model as well, model class in here. So just go to add class. Don't worry, we'll get rid of all those squiggly lines in a moment. Let us grab the model code. If you've followed my other tutorials, you'll see the similarities in here. So, okay, we've got our information there. Let's bring the model class namespace in, which is web models, and now you can see we can see our user data model. Now, how is best to explain this? It's a little bit tricky. For this Angular code to go into this API, we have to give this API a sort of permission process, and that's what this enable calls magic does. To do that, we have to inject this API with a NuGet package, and we're going to do that right now. So, oops, manage NuGet packages. The name of the package is, I've got it here in my little text file. It's this one. So if we just type that in there, we'll get the right package coming up. So this cross-origin support, you might hear it commonly. It'll bring this attribute in line. We've still got to add a namespace in here, but it will bring all these components in, which allows this domain to go into this API. Let's just install that, and I should really explain while it's doing that so we can save on time. So yes, when we put these attributes on, you have to add in the domain of your client. In here we've got localhost 62479. Your localhost could be different. You just got to put in that magical number there. And once that's done, then this client, our initial client, our Angular client, can use this API functionality. So while that's doing that, I'm going to grab a little bit more code here, and I have to bring this namespace in here as well. Okay, you can see there are a few dependencies that if you put this guy in, these dependencies also have to be put in, but that's done automatically, which is a good thing. So now we can close on that. Oops, yeah, there we go. Okay, and let's bring in this namespace, and now we can see this attributes come in line. So now, you might say, where do I find my magical number localhost? First of all, you can just run it, and you'll find it when it comes up. But you can also go in here remember, this is our Angular app here. This is what we're looking at here. You can go in here, and it's in one of these guys. I think it's no, it's down here somewhere. Ah, there we go. So you can find it here in the properties web area. So it's this magical number of the client that has to go in here. That's more or less. And just see that as your sort of domain. So whenever you host it up there and you called it myfantasticwebsite.com, you would put in here http myfantasticwebsite.com, and then that myfantastic website can call this API process. Okay, so let's close that down. Let's save everything. And there is still another little bit of magic code we've got to do before we forget things, which is here. So you've got to enable the calls here, and that's done in your web API code as well. So this is here in our web API config. You have to allow or enable the CORS process in there to make it all work, to make this attribute work in sync. So those two processes have to be added. Right. So let's talk a little bit about how the Angular is now going to call this web API. Maybe I can split screen this. There we go. And then maybe I can split screen this as well. There we go. And right, so now what we have here is our web API code, our HTML, our client, which is calling this guy, and our Angular code. So let's start from the top, which is our HTML. I guess it's one way of looking at it. So here we have Angular. I'm not going to go too deeply in it, but see my Angular tutorials. With Angular, you have to obviously reference the Angular file, which is in our scripts folder here. You always have to have that at top level. Then you have to reference your own Angular file that you've created, which is our file here. Always put the ng app process in as well. That's connected to this little magical guy. But please see my Angular tutorials for more. We have to have a controller in here, which is related to this object here. So now, what this code will do is we're going to enter a username, let's say Mary, and then we're going to click on the button, and then when we click on the button, this function here is going to be called, and it's going to be passed the username by the ng model process. Once that button is pressed, this function here is going to be called, like I said, and that's here in our Angular file, and it's passed the username, so that Mary object. Because what we're doing here is allows the person to pass their username, as in back to Mary, and at the end of the whole process, their password is returned to the screen. So this HTML function here calls this Angular function here, username put in here, and then we go into our Angular HTTP request, and as you can see here, this is simply now referencing the API area. You've got to put in the right localhost environment, so whatever the number is for this guy, like I showed you with this guy, you have to put that in there as well. Then obviously you've got to reference the API folder, which is this guy here, the API controller, which is this guy here, username controller, and then the actual function within the API controller, which is this guy here, as you can see, get user password. And we're passing in the parameters, which in case, again, here is the username, and you have to say what sort of process are we doing, and that's a get process. We're doing a get process here. And if all goes well, we go here into our then function. We get the response, which is this information here. We get, we have to say response. We get the data object out of that, pass that to a user password, which ends up here. So the password will be shown in this area here. So that's the magic of the Angular process, but if you want to learn more about Angular itself, please see my tutorials on Angular. And that's in a crux how it works. Again, I'm just sort of not wanting to repeat, but because this is a JavaScript process, we have to put in these enable core processes to allow this Angular file here to call into our API function here. With the headers here, what you're saying here is allow any action. Oh, sorry, with the methods here, I mean, you're saying allow the start asterisk. You're saying allow any. So allow. This means allow gets, delete, a put, a post object. You can set, obviously put here get or post, but I can't find the asterisk. There it is. That means allow any, which is useful. Right now we're just going to allow any. So that's all that's really needed. We can now build it. Just remember, don't forget to put your enable cause process in the actual web API config area as well, and make sure it's above these guys here. So let's save all that and then let's run it. Let me bring this guy up and let me bring our web page up. So obviously here's our HTML page, and this will call our Angular file here, and it in turn now calls this web API functionality. So now if we put in Mary, it'll go in here, it'll look for the username Mary, and then it should find my password Mary, and so that should then be displayed on the screen in this Angular area. Let's give that a go. It's a bit slow. It's very slow. I'm going to refresh it. Have we got an error going on, or? Let's see what's happening here. Nope, I can't see an error. Okay, so we just have to do a hard refresh. Yeah, sometimes oh, okay, there we go. We got some sort of error, haven't we? It's a bit strange. Mary. Okay, we're going into debug mode here. Uh, 6258. Okay. What I'm going to do is rebuild this. Okay. It's slowly coming around. This might take a while. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I see an error already. I haven't got this as the startup application. Silly me. Silly, silly me. Okay. We have the web API as the startup application now. So we need to rebuild it, unfortunately. Yeah, we had the web API as the startup application, not the actual Angular app, which meant strange things were happening. Right, just while that's doing that, I'm just going to check certain things here. It looks all healthy. It should be functioning. But obviously technology as it is, sometimes things can just not work. Okay, finally, thank you. Let's try this now. We get an error. We didn't get an error. Oh, it's just taking a very long time. You can actually see it getting our information here. So you see, we can see the my password Mary. It is just taking a very long time. So if we close out of that, and there we go. We can see now the my password Mary has come up. So we have entered the API here. You know, we found the password for Mary, which is my password Mary, which has come up here finally and displayed using this Angular expression area here. So we can see all the magic was working. So yeah, there is a lot of concepts to go through here, I guess, and it might be confusing. What I will do once more is just show you all the screens of the code areas so you can hopefully get them down quite well, if that is of any help. Remember the enable cause area to put in, and our user data model here in our web API. You don't have to worry about the other files. In our scripts area, obviously we've got this Angular file, so make sure it looks like that. You can put it on pause, and then the HTML with all our wonderful Angular code. But if you're finding some of this Angular confusing and you're new to it, please visit my Angular tutorials, and feel free to also subscribe to my channel, or even go to my website there as well. Alright, thanks for your time and see you next time. Bye.